Hello guys. You are on the channel Alice Reddit Stories. Enjoy watching. He cheated after we had a miscarriage and kept secret for 2 years. After reading Hell Hath No Furies chronicles of her experience with her now ex, I thought maybe sharing my own might bring me some comfort. To give background, I am currently 24F, my husband is 29M. When this happened, I was 21F and him 25M. We've been together for almost 5 years, married for 2. We had a miscarriage 3 months prior. I've had miscarriages before. Some painful and terrifying and others barely noticeable. All of them happened in the first trimester, never going past 8 to 10 weeks. Well, one day his dad calls out of the blue to just check in, see how we're doing. It's a known thing in his family that when his father dreams of children/babies, it's usually because one of his kids is pregnant/has gotten someone pregnant. This has been on point every time. All 3 of his granddaughters he had a dream, my sales miscarriage, and now 2 of mine. Except he didn't think it was me and his son the first time, so he called his eldest, which we heard about later one. But this second time, he called my husband. I always have pregnancy tests in the bathroom as BC isn't 100%, obviously, and since I have no periods on BC, I rather find out sooner than later. While he's still on the phone, I chug some water and then head to the bathroom to do a test. Right before me, I start to see the faintest line forming. I try to not think too much. Maybe it was my eyes tricking me. I'll do another in the morning. I went straight to the bathroom the next morning and yep. More clear. I'm pregnant. I start panicking. We aren't ready to have a baby, we're not even married yet, and we're still unsure about having kids to begin with. I walk out and tell him. At this point, we're running late to my 3rd job, which was helping my godmom's food truck. He's shocked and now anxious and upset. We get to my job and there's a farmer's market happening that day. After telling my godmom and then ending my shift early, we walk around and talk our options. We start to get more comfortable with this possibility of having a kid. I already have an appointment set up the next day with my therapist, so after discussing things some more, we put it to rest. I wake up the following morning and I'm cramping. I grab my heating pad and some ibuprofen. I set up to have my therapist appointment via telehealth, before COVID, when telehealth was rare. We're talking and halfway through I feel like I'm peeing myself as my cramps get more intense. I manage to finish the session despite my therapist offering to end it sooner, and I stand up to discover blood everywhere. I have bled through my clothes, the sheets, and onto the mattress. I was still bleeding. I run to go clean myself up some. As I start sobbing, my husband asks what's going on. He sees the carnage on our bed. I finish cleaning up, open the door for him to hand me a new set of underwear and shorts. Once I have a pad and clean clothes on, I open the door and he see me as I treat my clothes while I sob into our bathroom sink. The water has turned bright red and my heart aches as he hugs me and makes me stop cleaning. He asked what I wanted to do. We decide to head to the hospital and I'm seen promptly. Everyone, for once in my disabled life, treats me with care and compassion as we see what's happening and if the baby is gone. I'm on the verge of needing a blood transfusion with how much blood I've lost. We start to worry that I might lose my life to this. He's holding my hand and being the best support he can be. But it hits him that he has work that day. He attempted to go to work, but his manager told him not to worry, just be there with me. While he was gone, I ended up getting a vaccine as it turns out. I'm Rh negative. On a day I feared for my life and my child's life, I found out why I kept having these miscarriages and how my GYN had failed me for years. Oh, and the vaccine was done in my ass. They also forgot to tell the nurse giving me the shot that I had just miscarried. She asked when I was due and I had to tell her that I had just miscarried. So never. She felt awful and apologized profusely. I don't blame her, and I didn't even back then. He came back and the discharge papers start getting set up. At this point I am an empty shell full of anger and grief. I come home to see my friend and her husband waiting there for us with some fries and a Frosty for me. My friend, Mary, fake name, gave me a huge hug, which just triggered the waterfall of tears as I clung onto her. Her support helped me so much. She and some other folks checked in on me a lot those next few weeks. I'm so thankful for them, as those check-ins kept me alive. I was in a dark place and I was able to hide it really well. During this time my husband refused to talk about it. I suggested his friends or maybe his therapist. I even contacted his friend that we lived with, and that I hated as he treated me like shit, to ask that he checks up on him, as we just went through something really rough and he could use the support. But he never reached out to anyone or talked to anyone about it. At some point, as it's unclear to me when, as he doesn't even remember, he went to a sketchy massage parlor. Admittedly, he didn't know it was that kind of sketchy. He was offered a happy ending during it and he took it. Yes, it was sexual in nature, but this woman did not have sex with him and she made him wear protection for both the hand and mouth stuff. This occurred once. Now, during most of our relationship, I've made it clear that I'm okay with other women being involved, though not as a relationship, but more strictly sexual, FWB sorta deal, as I am attracted to women but hadn't gotten to do much due to external factors. Only condition was that we needed to communicate with each other in regards to adding another person. Very simple. However, he did not tell me about this until 2 years later, now married, living on our own, and shortly after a lot of shit had gone down. Now it started off as an embarrassing funny story from him, won't go into details out of kindness, but I asked when it happened. He was in the Navy and was deployed to a lot of different countries, especially ones that do sex worker-based stuff. Disclosure: I am a former sex worker, so the next bit is relevant. I think it clicked then that this wasn't another one of his weird deployment/Navy stories. He admits it was 2 years ago. Why didn't you just tell me back then? Why are you telling me now? I felt like I had cheated on you in some form despite us being open, and didn't want to hurt you like that since you've been cheated on before. Yes, that is right. His knee-jerk reaction was to hide it instead of just telling me. Which, if he had just told me, and I told him this too, I would have just laughed, told him he needs to do better research next time, and maybe had my massage therapist check him out to be sure the woman didn't mess him up too bad. Well, my mom was visiting at that time and I brought up the story, I guess as a trauma response, in a funny manner. She laughed and he turned red from embarrassment. I think it took a few days for me to register what he had just admitted to me. He cheated. He hid it from me without any indication that he had done something for 2 years. What if he does this again, but with someone he feels an emotional connection with? Because sex work is just work. She clocks out just like us. She didn't have feelings for him, and neither did he. She just provided a service, and that's it. Well, the thoughts started piling on. As you might remember, I mentioned I'm disabled. I have a rare brain disease that at the time the confession happened I had just had 2 major surgeries for. I had a mini stroke earlier in the year from it. My husband is my caretaker when my brain disease isn't in remission. I have no family besides my mom left to help me if I were to need it. It all just piled on. I felt stuck. I began to go through practically all the stages of grief on him. It didn't help that I was actually grieving a loss at that time. By the way, anyone who's ND, if you didn't know, sometimes our sensory processing issues can come out in forms of anxiety, which in my case then came out as anger. I would just start yelling at him in anger as I sobbed about how do I know I can trust him. How could he do this after all I gave up for him? I'm from the South and most of my family is racist. We are interracial. And they said some racist things when we visited that year and refused to admit it was racist. So I went and see with 98% of my family. I was absolutely heartbroken. I had just started to get through my issues of depending on others for help. Now I hated how much I had come to depend on him. After a month of going back and forth with my emotions, the entire time talking to my therapist, mind you, I made the decision to take him up on his suggestion, couples counseling. He pays for the sessions, and if I decide that I can't do it anymore, if we can't work through this, then he won't fight me on leaving. We started counseling pretty fast, and if there were personal issues that needed more work, our counselor recommended we work through those with our individual therapists. We followed this. It's been a year now since that all started. I'm not completely able to trust him still, but honestly I don't think I've ever trusted anyone 100%, hell not even myself, from all the gaslighting from those around me. Thanks. There have been times where I feel overwhelmed and back to that trapped feeling again. I have considered divorcing him. Multiple times. I won't say we're fixed as a couple, but I see the improvements he has made. I see the effort. I see him struggle as he tries to unlearn a lot. If your partner is former military, you know how hard it is for them to unlearn a lot of the brainwashing they go through. It's not an easy feat. I've decided to stay. I do love him. He's my best friend and we've been through a lot together. He's finally started opening up about the miscarriage, especially since we decided to not have kids and he will be getting a vasectomy. It's been hard. But I think with time we'll get to a new normal that's healthier. I wanted to share this for the people who choose to stay as their partners recognize the mistake they've made and put effort into remedying that mistake. Not all of us are going to choose divorce/separation. But I also recognize the ones that do, and I respect your choice just as much as the others. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. There are many interesting stories ahead of you.